Alrighty, so Unit 1, Portrait of a Word. Now this may sound a little complicated, but it really isn't. If you think about it, what we're asking you to do is to write about a group that you belong to, a community. There are different kinds of communities that we all belong to. We call them discourse communities. The word discourse comes from the same root as discussion. So it's all about language. And again, if you think about it, we belong to a lot of different kinds of communities, not just one group, right? Essentially, there are three kinds of discourse communities, if you will, and I'll explain that as I go. There's the groups that we're born into, the culture, the language, maybe a religious organization. We really don't have any say on those. We're sort of, that's part of who we are, right? And so you can't really change that. It's hard to get out of that, that what we call a primary discourse community, the one that we're born into. But then there are other kinds of discourse communities that we belong to. They're the ones that we join because we're interested in what they're doing. Gaming is one of them. Another one would be sneakerheads. If you don't know what sneakerheads are, let me show you what this is. I had no idea until a couple years ago. Sneakerheads. These are people who buy and sell, yes, sneakers, and it's really kind of interesting. All about buying and selling shoes, and the different kinds of shoes, and there's a whole lot that goes on in this group. It's pretty fascinating. And here's a biography of a 50-year-old sneakerhead. This one's pretty hilarious because it's a graphic biography. Okay, this guy's a sneakerhead. What kind of fun. And then there's also about being a woman in the sneakerhead culture. Now, I had a female student a year or so ago who was a sneakerhead, and one day there was a synchronous class, and she just launched into this thing about how hard it was to be a girl in the sneakerhead community, because for the most part the sneakerheads they look like this, okay? So it's hard for a girl to fit in. And that's one of the things about discourse communities, is that they are inclusive because they're all talking about the same kind of thing, but they have a specific language and a specific way of looking at the world and dealing with it. That also excludes people. If you're a gamer and you've ever been a newbie in an MMOR, and if you don't know what an MMOR is, you're not a gamer, right? You know how hard it is to fit into the gaming community, right? It's got its own language, its own kind of rules, if you will. People, once you join this community and you start to learn the language, then you'll be part of the community. If you don't learn the language and you are not part of the community, then you kind of get excluded. So a discourse community can include people. It's a way of including people who are interested in something, but also excluding other people. And there's a third kind of discourse community, and that's a professional one. Things like engineers. Engineers have a certain language. They're a certain kind of people, if you will. That's kind of a stereotype, but most of this stuff is anyway. Doctors certainly, share certain values, and they certainly do have a language. It's a jargon, right? A whole bunch of different words that if you don't know them, you're never going to be part of that community. So those are three different kinds of discourse communities: the cultural ones that we're born into, the interest ones that we join because we want to know more about that group, and the professional ones. So you're going to get, for this assignment, you're going to get to pick one of those communities and write about how language is used in that community. And you can go about it in one of two different ways. You can pick a word that really kind of symbolizes that community. Now, it has to be a word that not everybody uses, right? It can't be like family, because it's just too general. It needs to be something that's really specific to your group. You're going to be reading a little the first part of a book by Junot Diaz, The Brief and Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde, and he talks about fuku, which is, I'm going to leave it to you to figure out what it is, but he uses that one word to really describe the community of this whole country, right? So you can pick a word. The Queen Latifah, which we're not going to be reading, but she talks about the word, why she is a queen, right? Because that word means something specific, and why she's not a bitch, right? Then Perry Coss's essay, which we are going to be reading, it's pretty old, but it still works, about being a new doctor and joining a hospital community, and the language that you have to learn in order to function as part of that discourse community. So you can talk about the language in that community. I had a guy last term who wrote about not only do you have to go through boot camp when you join the Army, but you have to learn the language of being a soldier. So it's not as simple as it seems. So he wrote this really, really fun piece about joining the discourse community of boot camp and the language he had to learn in order to be a part of it. So these can be funny. They can be poignant. They don't have to have anything else to them. It's just, and they don't even have to be all in English. I had students write, sections of it in Spanish, or wonderful Japanese characters or Chinese characters, and that's fine. This is you talking about a word or the language of one of the discourse communities that you're a member of. Right? So let me show you a little bit how you're going to be graded. The audience is all of us. I'm going to talk about audience again in just a second. Let me go down. It's at least 1,000 words, and it's due the 18th. And to get started, you can ask yourself some of these questions to think about the word or the language. But the things you're going to have to do, first of all, there's perusal assignments, and there's this. Let me go back to course home. It's this one. What is a discourse community? It's the first thing. There's two parts to this. This first part is actually a presentation that Professor Carrie Hall, who's the head of the first year writing program, made, and then I tweaked a little bit. And let me just go through it again just to give you a little bit more about discourse communities. These discourse communities, they often share the same goals, the same methods of communicating. Like, I had a student write about a Discord server group that she was a part of, a discourse community, where they used the Discord server to answer, get help, discuss engineering homework problems. It was a pretty cool thing, and she showed us pictures, did screenshots of some of the Discord stuff. That was kind of nice. So, most discourse communities have a way of communicating with each other, whether it's by text or in that case it was a whole Discord server. That was the community, right? So that's one part of it. Not every group is a discourse community. It can just be you and your friends hanging out in the corner. They usually have a goal. They have a reason for forming. Now, primary discourse communities are a little different than ones that you're born into, but often there's an unstated goal with these primary discourse communities, and that's just to sort of bring people into and teach them more about and have them become a real part of that community, right? It's all about the lore and the history and the language and the superstitions and everything about that discourse community, right? So they all have a reason for being. They're not just a thing. They have a purpose to them. This is a little bit more about it. You can think of your discourse communities it's as part of an identity kit, right? Because you belong to, like I belong to crochet community. I belong to rescue organizations of different kinds. I belong to rhetoric and composition instructors. That's a discourse community, right? So, and heaven help me, I belong to the discourse community of being what it means to be Texan, and which sometimes I hate and have been trying to get rid of forever. But, it's primary DC, and I'm kind of stuck with it. So here's some examples of them. Noricans, people of Puerto Rican descent or from Puerto Rico who live in New York and identify that way. Gamers, I'm not going to read all these to you, but these are some of them. What's interesting, there's a couple really important things about discourse communities. One of them is when you're writing something, if you understand the discourse community you're writing to, it will help your writing have more focus and really help you direct how that language is going to sound. Say, for example, you're writing to a bunch of dog owners and dog lovers about why they should adopt a cat. And you're probably going to write it a little different way than if you were writing to a group of cat owners about why to adopt a cat, right? So it's not the same. So if you understand the audience, and that's what this is all about, is understanding the audience, it will help you make the piece that you're putting together have more impact and really matter more to that audience, that community. For those of you who've done rhetorical analysis or understand rhetorical situation, any communication act is made up of several components. One is the author. One is the purpose of the thing that's being put together. One is the context, why now? One is the text itself, is it a text message? Is it a video? What's the genre of it? And the other is the audience. Right? And in discourse community, if you understand the discourse community of that audience, it will help you make that text better. Make that thing that you did make more sense, and help you. It makes the writing of it a lot easier, because then oh, hey, I'm writing for a professor, so the language has got to be a little more formal. Or hey, I'm writing to a bunch of gym rats. I can use a whole lot of jargon in that way, right? So that's kind of important. Now the other thing that's not on here that should be is when you start a new job. Those of you who've been and gone into a new job, how hard it is the first few weeks or months to kind of fit in. Where do I belong? And what's happening is you're trying to figure out what that discourse community is all about, how people are talking to each other, what goals and values they share, because they often do, and then also learning the language, the jargon. Like I've quit more than one career because I loved the work, but I hated the other people who did it. And so I just bolted, went someplace else. And that's legit, because this is all about, it's all about people as well as the things that are written. So the discourse community has a couple of really important components. One is, again, understanding the audience you're writing to. And two is understanding your own process of fitting into discourse communities and understanding why that discourse community exists, how it includes people, and how it excludes people. So this is the thing from Professor Hall. There's another part of this assignment, and this is an article by Dan Meltzer, more about discourse communities, but it's really the story of how he joined one, a discourse community of guitarists. It's really kind of funny. There's lots of fun stuff in here. He's got pictures of, frets and annotation, and it's not popping up. See, like stuff like that, right? So, which is all part of, one of the genres of this music discourse community is this kind of stuff, right? How the music looks. So read this. This is the second part of this assignment, right? The first part you can annotate if you want to, but the second part do pay close attention to. And if you have questions, and comments, leave them on the side. Okay, so that's the first part of this. So that's really all discourse communities is a group of people who share certain goals, have a reason to join together, have specific ways of communicating with each other, and share a specific language or set of words. And so you're going to take one of your discourse communities and write about that language use within that discourse community. So let me walk you through the assignments. For next Monday, the 11th, just read the thing by Dan Meltzer that I just showed you, okay? And again, that PDF of the presentation is up there too. By Wednesday, you're going to be reading two more things here. Discourse community examples. One of them is this bit from Juno Diaz about Fuku. And then the second part is this article, and yes, I got it right from the New York Times, about, basic LOL and NAD from a column called Hers. And it's really old, but it's still, if you've been around the medical community, this stuff doesn't change, and the language certainly doesn't. So read and annotate both of these, and then when you get that done, read both of them, and then by Thursday write a post about it. You can respond to the two articles, but it's mostly, what you think about the idea of discourse community and some of the ones that you think that you belong to. Just thinking through, how did you learn, what went on in that discourse community? What languages did you have to learn? What spoken and unspoken rules were there in that discourse community? So this is your chance to really think through the idea of discourse community on paper, and then I'll give you some feedback. This is an open lab post. The category is My DCs, right? And then for Friday, yes, we have a Padlet, and this is the fun part. This is what I call putting up an artifact, an image. On this Padlet, right here, you will put your name in the title, and then tell us the discourse community and the word or phrase that you think you're going to write about. It's subject to change, of course. And then add an image that tells us something about the community. Like a couple of years ago, before the pandemic, had a student who, she was part of a group that were trying to preserve medieval Chinese culture. And she brought in these two gorgeous dresses that just, our jaws just dropped. So that was an artifact that she shared with us from that discourse community. And I already told you about the student with the Discord server with the homework. She had a bunch of screenshots to show us, and that was her artifact. This one is from the first part of the summer, so you can see what some of my former first students did. See, here's his nigger head right there. Hospitals, about being in a hospital, those were really interesting. Gaming development, not just being a gamer, but the game development community, which is a little bit different. Here's my student with the basic training, which was great, and it was really funny. In fact, everything he did was a lot of fun. Yes, it was fun. So this is what you're going to be doing on here, right? So starting with the big spot, and then putting your discourse community and a picture or an artifact from it. All right. So that's for that one. And then the following Monday, and of course you can do these ahead of time. I mean, this is just when they should be done to keep you sort of on track. But you can do them ahead of time. Do them as fast as you want to. The big due date is Monday the 18th. In the Google Drive folder, label Portrait of a Word. Upload a draft of it. Now, this doesn't have to be perfect. Make it as good as you can get it. And it will get an interim grade from 1 to 5. 5 being an A, 4 being a B, blah, blah, blah. When I see them, when we get up here and we don't have a lot of time to do a lot of commenting on each other, but I'm going to ask you to do it a little bit anyway. Once you get comments from each other and from me, I'll leave you lots of notes. You can use those to do the revision that will show up in your final portfolio. And that revision grade will then, I'll switch out this interim grade that's in the grade book for the one that's in the final portfolio. So say, for example, you kind of, just didn't have a clue what to do on this, and your draft was like a 3 or 3.5. And when you do the revision, you get the notes from me, say, oh, now I get it, and you fix it, and it's really good. It's like an A, right? I'll go back and give you a 5 in the draft. So the grades always look a little inflated in my class, but that's because I want people, I don't care, I do care where you start, but I really am more interested in where you end up. And that's what this is all about. Now, the other thing to add to the bottom of your draft, once you get this thing written, just add a little thing at the bottom, just mostly to tell whoever reads it, meaning me and whoever else, what you wanted to accomplish with it, what you think is working well, and what you're worried about or think you might need some help with. So this is just here's what I did. Now this is kind of what I think I did well and what I kind of not too sure about. Okay, so I'll have some clue as to how you're feeling about the draft when I get around to leaving you notes. Okay, so that's Unit 1. Enjoy this. People have a good time. Again, the language doesn't have to be formal. This is not, you're not trying to persuade me about anything. This is just a story, right? It's a narrative. Just tell me a story about your discourse community and the language that's used within it and how it affected you maybe. I've had these be really funny. I've had them be really, really sad. They're always really interesting and up to 1,000 words minimum. And again, let me know if you have questions, and I will post this on Perusall in the video lectures folder as soon as it processes. Okay, I will see you soon. Bye.